My wife was perfect until the Amber Alert said she had a 10-year-old child she forgot to mention. The alert that shattered the perfect life. Your wife has a child you never knew about. She's been missing for 48 hours. The words on the television screen weren't mine. They belonged to the emergency system, but they hit me like a betrayal carved into stone. An Amber Alert. A missing child. Her name? Linked directly to my wife's. I froze. My phone buzzed at the same time, echoing the exact same message. And suddenly, the living room, the one we had painted together last spring, felt like a courtroom. A place where trust stood trial. If you find value in real stories told with clarity and truth, make sure to subscribe to stay informed with Left Woman Loud. For 3 years, I had believed I married perfection. Claire was smart, witty, unshakably kind, the kind of woman who asked waiters their names and remembered them months later. She baked bread at midnight just because she wanted the house to smell like warmth. She loved me fiercely, and I trusted her. But that night, with the piercing tone of an Amber Alert cutting through the air, I saw her name tied to something impossible. A 10-year-old child reported missing. The mother listed Claire Mitchell, age 34. Claire Mitchell. My Claire. I remember whispering, almost to myself, 10 years old? That's before we even met. But then a darker thought struck. Why didn't she ever tell me? In that moment, the perfect marriage I had built in my mind collapsed into rubble. Claire came into the room seconds later, holding a basket of laundry as if nothing had happened. She looked at the screen, froze, and her face drained of every trace of blood. Her voice trembled. They found out. Not, who is this child? Not, this must be a mistake. Just, they found out. And with that, I knew it wasn't a mistake at all. I wanted to scream, demand answers, shake her shoulders until the truth fell out. Instead, silence consumed us, broken only by the hum of the fridge and the faint static of the TV. She set the laundry basket down on the carpet, hands trembling so badly that socks spilled across the floor. I can explain, she whispered, but her eyes were already glossy with tears. Explain? How do you explain a decade of silence? That night marked the beginning of a spiral. My mind couldn't stop racing. Who was this child? Why had Claire hidden them? And where, God, where were they now? The present collided with the past in brutal flashes. I remembered our vows at the altar, her saying, no secrets, no shadows, just us forever. Now those words tasted like poison. I thought about the morning she slipped outside to take calls from work, the trips to visit her sister where she never let me tag along, the locked drawer in her desk that I once joked about. I thought it was quirks. Turns out it was a fortress of lies. But here's the thing. I didn't just feel betrayed. I felt terrified because a child was missing. And that child was hers. That night, we barely spoke. She sat at the kitchen table, face buried in her hands, while I stood near the window, staring at the glow of the alert still flashing across my phone. Every question I wanted to ask clashed against the one question I couldn't escape. Am I married to a stranger? Claire finally looked up at me, her voice raw. His name is Daniel. He's my son. I gave him up when he was born, but I never stopped looking for him. And now, he's gone. My chest tightened. The world tilted. Her son. Her son. I had imagined us having kids together someday, but not like this. Not a child from a secret past suddenly pulled into our lives by tragedy. I wanted to shout, how could you hide this? But her tears silenced me. Instead, I asked, voice sharp but trembling, why now, Claire? Why did I have to find out like this? She didn't answer immediately. She just stared at the floor, clutching a crumpled dish towel like it was a lifeline. Finally, she said, "Because I thought I could protect you from the past. From me." That was when I realized something chilling. This wasn't just about a missing child. This was about a missing truth. And both were about to unravel everything. What I didn't know was the next 48 hours would drag me into secrets far darker than Claire's silence. She had been lying long before she loved him, not out of malice, out of survival. He, Evan, stands in the doorway while Claire steadies her breath and reaches for the locked desk drawer. The key hangs on a thin silver chain she used to wear under sweaters, a private ornament he thought was sentimental, not functional. It clicks, and the sound is small, like a knuckle tapping a coffin lid. Inside, a manila folder, a hospital bracelet, an ultrasound print with a date in the corner that predates their first meeting by a decade. A photograph of a yellow house with a red tricycle on the porch. Pages, printed emails, hole-punched and bound with twine, as if ritual might make a story easier to carry. Claire doesn't look at him when she speaks. She says, "I filed it all under before us. I thought that would make it harmless. It didn't." 10 years earlier, Claire was 24 and laundromat poor, flipping waitress shifts like playing cards. She kept the pregnancy test in her apron pocket until her break, walked to the back alley and learned the truth next to a stack of recycling bins. She sat on a milk crate and whispered into the cool air, "Okay, okay." The words sounded like a promise and a plea. The father? He had a name and a plan that were both wrong. They met in a communications seminar. He wore ambition like cologne. His parents owned a consultancy with a 3-syllable name and a lobby full of glass. He said he wasn't ready. He said her dreams mattered. He said adoption was responsible. He said a lot of things while checking his phone. Claire's mother died when Claire was 19, which means there was no kitchen table to sit at and no hand to hold. She had a church pamphlet and a bus route to the agency. She also had the kind of soft, ruthless hope that makes bargains with the future. If I do this right, maybe he'll be safe. If I do this right, maybe I'll be allowed to be someone else later. At North River Adoptions, she learned to talk in paperwork. Consent forms, counseling notes, options grids. A social worker named Jenna McKay set a cup of tea in front of her and said, "You get to choose what love looks like." The line sounded like a kindness until it didn't. They gave her a book of families, thick as a wedding album, couples in sweaters on docks, couples in apple orchards, couples whose smiles looked bulletproof. She found one that felt like a page she could bleed into. Laura and Michael Whitaker, a school counselor and a park ranger. Front porch, red tricycle, dog named Pluto. No glass lobbies. She chose them, but it never felt like winning. Only like choosing the least sharp knife. Back in the present, Evan touches the hospital bracelet with 2 fingers. Mitchell, Claire, 0412. Beneath it, a smaller band, a newborn's, baby boy, 0427. Daniel, Claire says, and the name is a stone she finally sets down. I named him in my head before I signed anything. I never said it out loud. Saying it would make it real. Not saying it would make it cruel. Why didn't you tell me? Evan's voice is steady, but there's a seam of hurt he can't stitch. He is trying to hold 2 truths at once, that a child exists, that he was kept from knowing, and the weight is awkward, like groceries carried in one arm. Because I thought the past would stay where I put it, and because the agreement was semi-open. Updates once a year, no contact. I could watch a life I wasn't allowed to touch. She slides an email to him, printed on thin, white paper. The date from 5 years ago. Evan studies the half-toned picture, a boy with a cowlick and a grin that looks like summer. a paper robot in his hand, crooked and proud. How does an Amber Alert list you if it's semi-open? Claire swallows. Because I broke the rules in my head long before I did it on paper. 2 years ago, Claire began sending letters to Jenna that weren't supposed to be forwarded. She wrote them anyway. They were not requests, they were confessions. Tell him I hope he never learns how to be brave the way I did. Tell him the name I gave him in my head means God is my judge because I felt unjudgeable by everyone else. The letters went nowhere for a year. Then, last winter, an envelope arrived with no return address, only Jenna's name typed like a secret. Claire, the Whitakers have moved. Semi-open updates remain in place. There has been a concerning incident at Daniel's school. Someone has been waiting outside the fence in a black sedan. The Whitakers filed a report. The license plate was covered. I am not supposed to tell you any of this. J.M. Concerning incident, black sedan, license plate covered. Words that sound, even months later, like boots on gravel outside a window at night. I wanted to tell you then, but what would I be telling you? That the life I gave away might now be in danger because of me or because of him? Him who? She waits. She lifts the next page. The father had a name, and it was not one she wrote in gel pen on a young woman's notebook. Tyler Kane. In 10 years, he learned to weaponize charisma. He joined his parents' firm, then a board, then a campaign advisory team. The glass lobby was bigger now, and the doors only opened for people like him. When Claire told him she was pregnant, he offered to pay every medical bill as if the numbers could bribe the biology. He signed nothing. His texts are on paper now, printed in 12-point Times New Roman, the way threats look when you force them to wear a suit. Keep me out of it, Claire. You are doing the right thing. I will deny everything. Evan's throat burns. You think Tyler is connected to this? Claire doesn't answer. She doesn't know the right verb. Kidnapped, followed, arranged. She knows only what fear does. It reopens drawers and renames choices. It makes a woman who once cataloged grief now catalog maps. She pulls one from the folder, a printout with circled locations: Woodlake Mall, North River Elementary, Whisper Pines Park. Blue circles for public, red for safe, yellow for if I ever had to. She told herself collecting news would make me prepared. The Whitakers made their Facebook private. The agency said, stop searching. I didn't. 2 weeks ago, I got an email from Laura Whitaker. She slides it over. Evans sets the page down like it's temperature. So when the Amber Alert came, you knew it wasn't a glitch. You knew... I knew somebody decided to make the past public and to punish me for it. Punish. He hears the word and wants to make a list of verbs that are allowed with it. To punish a crime, to punish a lie, to punish a woman who wouldn't be quiet. He wants to burn the list. He looks at Claire, really looks. She is not a liar who loved him badly. She is a survivor who chose him after choosing to survive. Both truths can live in the same room if he lets them. But there is still a boy. There is still a car. There is still a missing. How long has Daniel been gone? Evan asks. 48 hours, she says, voice tightening on the numbers. He was last seen leaving Robotics Club on Thursday. The alert says he might be with a non-custodial relative. That word, non-custodial. She laughs without humor. That's me. Legally, biologically, me. Evan pinches the bridge of his nose. He wants a plan. He wants clean nouns, police, attorney, roadmap. He wants time to flex its hands and give them back hours they didn't use wisely. He wants to be stupidly useful, the way men in advertisements lift boxes and turn wrenches. What do we do now? He asks. Claire reaches beneath the papers. There is a small blue box. the kind that should hold jewelry. Inside is a flash drive. She has been saving digital sin like a librarian. I tried to find him on my own, she says. I screenshotted a post where a teacher congratulated DW on winning the regional robotics fair. I don't know if it was him. I don't know if I did more harm than good. She looks up. I wanted to keep you clean. Clean doesn't matter. Finding him does. He could be angry later. He can't be later now. They sit at the table and make a list that looks like triage. 1. Call Jenna. 2. Call the detective listed on the alert. 3. Ask why Claire's name appears. 4. Ask what Tyler Kane hasn't said on the record. 5. Ask what the Whitakers haven't said on the record. The list ends where their power does. Evan's phone buzzes. An unknown number. A text message with a grainy image, a boy walking past a chain link fence. The back of him familiar in a way that hurts. The caption is not a caption. It is a directive. Stop looking. He shows Claire. She doesn't flinch. They've been sending those to Laura. Now they want us in the dark with them. He starts typing back, rage shaped into punctuation, then stops. He is not going to play a game someone else wrote the rules for. We go to the police, he says. We will, she answers. But first, there's something else. She pulls one last paper from the folder. It's not an email. It's a notarized letter. The notary stamp is smudged, official anyway. Evan blinks. You did this? Because I knew secrets are only safe until they're not. I didn't tell you because I was still trying to keep the two halves of my life from touching, and now they are. They sit with the contact number listed at the bottom of the letter, a detective in bold type. DT Maravas, a direct line. Evan reaches for the phone. Claire grips his wrist. Her fingers are cold and decisive. Before we call, she says, you should know one more thing. He waits. The last update I got from Laura, the night before the alert, she wrote one sentence I can't unhear. Claire's voice lowers. She said someone keeps asking Daniel if he remembers the name his mother gave him before he was adopted. The room tilts. The air is suddenly made of needles. What name? Evan asks, even though he knows. Daniel, Claire says. The name I never spoke out loud. Someone else did. She looks at the door, as if a stranger might be standing just beyond it, a mouthful of secrets that are hers. And what he doesn't know, what neither of them knows, is that the first knock they hear tonight won't be the police. It will be a man who says he can find Daniel faster than the department can, for a price. The knock came at 12:14 a.m. 3 sharp raps, measured, deliberate. Not the kind of knock neighbors used. Not the kind of knock that belonged to police either. Evan and Claire locked eyes. Neither moved. The sound carried through the silence of the house like a threat dressed in rhythm. Evan's hand found Claire's wrist under the table. He whispered, "Don't answer." But she was already standing. The man on the porch didn't wear a uniform. He wore confidence. Black jacket, clean shave, eyes too awake for this hour. He carried no badge, no clipboard. Only a folded piece of paper he held like it might burn him if he let go. "Mrs. Mitchell," he said, his voice calm, polite, or should I say, Daniel's mother. The words carved the night in half. Claire froze. Evan stepped forward, half shielding her, half shaking. "Who are you?" Evan demanded. The man smiled without warmth. "Someone who can give you answers faster than Detective Voss ever will. My name is Gray. I find people. Missing people." He slipped the paper into Evan's hand. A business card, but heavier, embossed with a symbol he didn't recognize. No phone number, just a phrase. "We don't search. We locate." And beneath it, a 7-digit code. "I know where Daniel is. I know who took him. But information like this comes with a price." Evan's throat tightened. This is extortion. He had his head. Extortion is taking what you already have, I'm offering what you don't. Time. And believe me, time is what you're running out of. Claire finally found her voice. Where is my son? Gray's eyes flicked to her. For the first time, something softer passed through them. Recognition, almost respect. He's alive, but he won't stay that way if you go through official channels. You want him breathing, you deal with me. The weight of his words pressed against the kitchen air like smoke. Evan's instincts screamed liar, but Claire leaned closer, desperate. What do you want?
Gray tucked his hands in his pockets. 10,000, cash, within 24 hours. I'll deliver proof of life, a location, you'll get your boy back. Or, Evan snapped, we hand your face to the police and let them bury you. Gray didn't flinch. He simply tilted his head, studying Evan like a chessboard piece. You think I'd knock on your door without preparing for that? He smirked. If I vanish, so does Daniel. For a long moment, no one spoke. Claire's pulse hammered in her ears. Evan's jaw ached from clenching. Gray was patient, a man who knew desperation always answered for him. Finally, Claire whispered, How do I know you're not lying? Gray pulled a phone from his jacket, tapped twice, and turned the screen toward them. A photograph. Daniel, alive, sitting in the backseat of a car, his face pale, his eyes wide, holding the same paper robot Claire had seen in the agency's update years ago. Claire's knees buckled. Evan caught her arm before she fell. Time is ticking, Gray said, sliding the phone back into his pocket. Call the detective and he disappears. Work with me and you'll have him by dawn tomorrow. When Gray left, the house felt colder than before. Claire sat at the table, hands trembling over the folder of adoption records. He's real. He's alive. He's manipulating you, Evan snapped, voice cracking. This could be staged. But what if it isn't? She shot back. What if he's all we've got? Evan leaned against the counter, staring at the card with its strange code. He hated the man, hated his smirk, his certainty, the way he used Daniel like currency. But he hated something else more. The gnawing possibility Gray was telling the truth. What if this is Tyler? Evan asked suddenly. Claire blinked. What? What if Gray's working for Tyler Kane? What if this is about leverage, your past, your silence? What better weapon than a child you can't claim? Claire buried her face in her hands. Memories blurred, Tyler's voice saying, "Keep me out of it." His absence at the hospital, his refusal to sign anything that might tie him down. She had thought she'd escaped him. Maybe she never had. At 1:03 a.m., Evan made a decision. He picked up the phone and dialed the number at the bottom of Claire's notarized letter. Detective Mara Voss. The line rang once, twice, then clicked. Voss, a woman's voice, answered, sharp but tired. Evan took a breath. We need to talk. My wife's name is on the Amber Alert for Daniel Whitaker. A man just came to our door claiming he knows where the boy is. There was silence on the line, then Voss's voice hardened. Stay exactly where you are, do not leave, and do not trust anyone else who comes knocking. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Evan hung up, meeting Claire's terrified eyes. What now? She whispered. He swallowed hard. Now, he said, we find out if the police are really on our side. The flashing blue lights splashed across the curtains at 1:28 a.m. Not loud, not chaotic, controlled. Detective Mara Voss stepped through the door like she had already been there before. Black blazer, hair pulled back, eyes that cataloged everything in the room without moving her head. She didn't sit when Evan gestured to the table. Instead, she scanned the folder, the open manila edges, the papers scattered like evidence waiting to be bagged. You opened the drawer, Voss said flatly. Claire froze. You know about that? I know about a lot of things, Voss replied. She finally set her leather file down on the counter, thick, heavy. It had a tab sticking out. Mitchell, Claire, confidential. Evan stiffened. Why does the police department already have a file on my wife? Vas didn't blink. Because your wife is not just a biological mother, she's a potential link. Daniel's case isn't just a missing persons report, it's bigger, and your wife's past makes her central. Claire's voice cracked. I'm not central, I'm irrelevant. I signed away my rights 10 years ago. Vas leaned closer, her voice low, deliberate. You can sign away legal rights. You can't sign away blood. And someone out there is using that bloodline as leverage. Evan's chest tightened. He felt like a bystander in his own home. The detective's words had weight, but they also had gaps, spaces where answers should have been. Who's behind this? He demanded. Who took him? Vas didn't answer. She opened her file instead, pulling out a photograph. She slid it across the table. A grainy surveillance still. Daniel leaving robotics club. Behind him, blurry but undeniable, stood a man in a tailored suit, phone pressed to his ear. Tyler Kane. Claire's breath shattered. No, her voice was almost a whisper. He promised me. He said if I kept quiet, he'd stay gone. Voss's eyes hardened. Men like Tyler Kane don't stay gone. They wait. They watch. And when the timing suits them, she tapped the photo with one manicured nail. They move. Evan paced, his fists balled. So why isn't he in custody? Why are we standing here, helpless, while a billionaire puppet master plays hide-and-seek with a child? Voss didn't flinch at his anger. Because Kane has lawyers who can make a kidnapping look like custody. Because every move has to be clean or Daniel gets lost in the system before he ever gets found on the street. She lowered her voice. And because Kane doesn't just want Daniel, he wants Claire. Claire's head snapped up. Me? Why? Voss hesitated. Then she pulled a sealed envelope from her file. She slid it across the table. We intercepted this yesterday. It was addressed to Kane's office, postmarked from a P.O. box 2 towns over. Handwriting analysis suggests it's from someone close to the Whitakers. You need to read it. Evan tore it open, scanning the words. Mr. Kane.
You said you'd protect us. You said our arrangement would keep him safe. But he knows now. He knows his real name. He keeps asking questions we can't answer. If you don't step in, he will find her. And then everything falls apart. L.W. Claire whispered. Laura Whitaker. The room tilted. The adoptive mother, Laura, had reached out to Tyler Kane. Not the police, not the agency. The man who once abandoned them all. Why would she do this? Evan asked. Claire's face went pale. Because she's scared. And Kane has power. More than police, more than me, more than anyone. Voss folded her arms. That's why Gray showed up tonight. Kane doesn't just use fear, he outsources it. Gray works in the cracks between law and leverage. If he's already made contact with you, it means Kane is tightening the circle. Evan's voice rose. Then why are we still sitting here? Why aren't we storming his glass tower and dragging Daniel out? Because storming Kane only works if you survive it, Voss shot back. I've been on this man for 3 years. He buys silence. He buries trails. He makes witnesses forget what they saw. If I move too soon, Daniel vanishes into a world I can't subpoena. Claire clutched the folder to her chest. So, what are you saying? That we just wait? Voss studied her for a long, brutal moment. Then she leaned forward. I'm saying the only way Daniel gets out of this alive is if you stop being a secret. If Kane wants leverage, he needs to know you won't break. That means going public, making your story bigger than his power. Evan shook his head instantly. No, that puts her at risk. That paints a target. She already has a target. Kane painted it the day Daniel was born. The words sank like stones. Claire's eyes filled with tears she couldn't stop. If I go public, they'll tear me apart. They'll say I abandoned him, that I don't deserve to look for him. And maybe they're right. Her voice cracked. Would he even want to know me after this? Voss softened barely. That's not the question, Mrs. Mitchell. The question is whether he gets the chance. Evan stared at the detective. He wanted to argue, to fight, to shield Claire from the exposure she feared. But deep down, he knew Voss was right. Secrets had gotten them here. Silence had given Kane the upper hand. The only way out might be to tear the silence open. And then Voss said something that chilled them both. We've already prepared a press statement. If you agree, it goes live in the morning. Your name, your story, everything. Claire gasped. You already? Because I knew this was coming, and because Kane needs to know he's not the only one holding a file with your name on it. The first headline broke before sunrise. Not from the police, not from them, from Kane. Evan woke to the vibration of his phone, the glow of notifications stacking one after another. He fumbled in the dark, blinking against the light, and there it was. Her face splashed across every newsfeed. Claire Mitchell, missing boy's secret birth mother. Beneath it, grainy photos pulled from social media, blurred shots of her walking into their local grocery store, cropped from old neighborhood events, all arranged to look sinister, all accompanied by words that twisted her life into scandal. Abandoned child, hidden past, unstable. Claire was still asleep, curled on the couch where exhaustion had pinned her. Evan stared at the screen, fury rising like fire in his throat. Kane hadn't just moved first, he'd drawn blood. By the time Claire stirred, the world was already hunting her. News vans rolled down their street, headlights sweeping across the blinds. Neighbors peeked out of windows, whispering. Claire sat up disoriented until she saw the screens. His phone, the TV, even the laptop glowing on the counter. She read the headlines once, then pressed her palms to her face. I told you, she whispered through her hands. I told you if the truth came out, I'd be the villain. Detective Voss arrived minutes later. No sirens, just authority. She swept past the curtains, snapped the blinds shut, and barked into her radio. Unit 4, contain the press perimeter. No leaks until I say so. Evan's jaw was tight. Contain? They're already everywhere. He shoved his phone at her. Kane painted her like a monster before she even had a chance to speak. Voss barely looked at the screen. Exactly why we need to push our release now. Your story, your voice, before his version calcifies. Claire shook her head. Her voice trembled. If I go on record, they'll tear me apart. They'll say I abandoned him, that I don't deserve to look for him. And maybe they're right. Evan kneeled beside her. Claire, stop. They don't get to define you. Not Kane, not headlines, not anyone. But his words felt paper-thin against the roar outside. Voss dropped a manila envelope on the table. Here's the draft. You read it, you choose. But decide fast. Every hour Kane controls the narrative is another hour Daniel becomes a pawn, not a person. Claire's hands shook as she unfolded the pages. The first lines punched her harder than any headline. Statement of Claire Mitchell. I am the biological mother of Daniel Whitaker. I made the decision for adoption 10 years ago out of love, not abandonment. Today, my only concern is his safety. Her eyes blurred before she finished the paragraph. I can't, she whispered. I can't make my son's name a war zone. Evan looked at Voss. There has to be another way. Voss's face was steel. There isn't. Kane will not be shamed into retreat. He will bury her in perception until she has no credibility left, unless we flip the script, unless the world sees a mother fighting for her child, not a ghost hiding in the shadows. Evan turned back to Claire, his voice urgent. Then fight, not for them, for him. If Daniel sees those headlines one day, do you want the only story he finds to be Kane's lies? That broke something in her. She pressed the paper against her chest, as if holding it closer might make it hers. "Do you think he'd forgive me?" she asked quietly. "Do you think he'd understand why I stayed silent all these years?"
Evan's throat tightened. He deserves the chance to decide that for himself. Voss's phone buzzed. She checked it, then cursed under her breath. Too late. Kane's escalated. She turned the screen to them. A press conference. Tyler Kane at a podium, flanked by lawyers and bodyguards. Cameras flashing, his voice smooth as oil. "Ladies and gentlemen, Daniel Whitaker is not missing. He is safe. The Amber Alert is a tragic miscommunication fueled by a woman with a troubled past. My family has taken steps to protect Daniel from instability, from exploitation, and from anyone who would drag him into chaos for personal gain." He paused, smiling faintly. "Let me be clear. Claire Mitchell has no role in this boy's life. Any attempt to claim otherwise is not only false, it is dangerous." The room of reporters erupted. Cameras clicked, questions shouted. Kane raised his hands like a conductor silencing an orchestra. Claire's body shook with rage. "He's lying! He's lying!" Voss leaned forward. "Then prove it." Claire slammed her palms against the table. "How? He has Daniel. He has the Whitakers. He has every resource on his side. What do I have?" "You have me," Evan said fiercely, "and you have the truth." Voss slid her phone into her pocket. "We go public now. Not tomorrow, not in an hour, now. I'll call the press. You tell your story before Kane makes you disappear in headlines forever." Claire's breath came in shallow gasps. The walls felt too small, the house too loud, her life too broken. But then she saw the ultrasound print still lying on the table, 10 years old, faded at the edges. She picked it up, fingers tracing the blurry outline of the boy she once held for minutes, then gave away for years. Her voice steadied. "Okay." But what she didn't know was that Kane had already anticipated this move. His team wasn't just shaping headlines. They were rewriting her past. And when Claire stepped in front of the cameras, the first question wouldn't be about Daniel. It would be about the crime Kane swore she committed a decade ago. The press conference didn't wait for her. It devoured her. Cameras flashed like lightning when Claire stepped out of the precinct doors beside Detective Voss. Evan's hand was on her back, steady but trembling. The crowd surged forward, microphones thrust out like bayonets. For a moment, Claire froze. Her face lit up on screens, above the crowd, on news tickers, on live stream feeds. She wasn't Claire the wife anymore. She was Claire the scandal. Voss leaned toward her ear. "Stay on script. Lead with Daniel's name, not your own." Claire took a breath and stepped up to the podium. "My name is Claire Mitchell. 10 years ago, I made the most difficult decision of my life. I chose adoption for my son, Daniel. I believed it was the safest way to give him a future. Today, Daniel is missing, and all I want, all I care about, is bringing him home safe." She paused. Camera snapped. The crowd hushed. But then it came, like Kane had written it himself. A reporter shouted, "Mrs. Mitchell, how do you respond to allegations you were investigated for fraud connected to your son's adoption?" The question hit her like a slap. "What?" she whispered. Another shouted, "Court documents show financial irregularities during your pregnancy. Did you receive money in exchange for giving up your child?" The crowd roared with questions now. Words blurred into a storm of fraud, bribery, black market adoption, unfit mother. Claire's face drained of color. She shook her head, stammering, "No, that's not true. I would never." But the microphones kept coming, the cameras kept flashing, and in living rooms across the city, millions were already making up their minds. Voss shoved through the crowd, shouting, "That's enough, step back." Her team moved to form a barrier, but the damage was done. The seed had been planted. Kane had given the world a villain, and they were eager to believe it. Inside the precinct, Claire collapsed into a chair. "He forged it, he must have. I never took money, I never sold my son, I swear." Evan knelt in front of her, holding her trembling hands. "I believe you. I don't care what papers they wave. I know who you are." But deep down, a shadow whispered in him, What if Cain really had a paper trail? What if there was something she hadn't told him yet? He shook it off. She was his wife, his partner, and she was breaking in front of him. Voss slammed the door shut and dropped a stack of papers on the table. Cain's team leaked sealed records, a half-truth twisted into poison. Claire's voice cracked. Half-truth? What does that mean? Voss's jaw clenched. It means you weren't investigated for fraud. You were investigated for support payments. Someone connected to Cain tried to funnel you money during the pregnancy. The agency flagged it, nothing stuck. But now Cain spun it into black market adoption. Claire buried her face in her hands. He's erasing me. He's making me the criminal instead of the mother. Evan stood, rage boiling over. So fight him. Release the real records. Show the truth. Voss's head shook. We can't. Those files are sealed by the court. Cain got them through illegal channels, but if we release them without a judge, it looks like desperation. It backfires. He knows that. Evan slammed his fist against the table. So he lies and we're just supposed to, what, play nice? Wait until Daniel disappears forever? Voss's eyes narrowed. She lowered her voice. There is one way, but it means stepping outside the law. It means finding evidence Cain doesn't want seen. And once we do, there's no going back. Evan leaned forward. Tell me.
At least, that's what Tyler insisted. Papers filed, schools informed, a polished narrative wrapped around him like a new jacket. Tailored, expensive, but not his size. Yet at night, in the quiet, he whispered the name he didn't know was forbidden. Daniel Mitchell. Because someone, he wasn't sure who, had said it once, said it softly, like a secret meant to keep, not steal. Cain's penthouse felt less like home and more like a stage. Security men stood at doors, meals arrived on trays, tutors rotated in and out like chess pieces. Every word, every movement, measured. And Cain, always smiling, always careful. Everything I do is for you, he told Daniel one evening, pouring juice into a crystal glass. I gave you life. I protected you when no one else would. You understand that, don't you? Daniel nodded, because nodding was safe. But later, lying in bed, he whispered to the dark, Then why do I remember her? Because he did. Not clearly, just fragments. Hands trembling as they held him, a lullaby off-key, a word, Daniel, that felt less like a command and more like a promise. When Cain used the name, it felt like ownership. When she had used it, whoever she was, it felt like belonging. The next morning, Daniel asked the question he wasn't supposed to. Why does she still have my name? Cain froze. Only for a second, then smiled, like a man adjusting a mask. She doesn't, Cain said smoothly. That woman has nothing. No claim, no right. The name is yours because I gave it to you. Understand? But Daniel's chest tightened, because Cain never gave him that name. He knew it, even if he didn't know how. Meanwhile, Evan and Claire sat in a dim motel room under police watch, waiting for Gray's flash drive. The news still painted Claire as a criminal. Cain still painted himself as savior. And Claire still clung to the ultrasound photo, whispering, He has to remember me. Evan took her hands. Then we remind him, not the world, him. We get to him before Cain rewrites the last of his memory. Gray arrived at dawn, tossing the flash drive onto the motel bed. Everything you need. Custody drafts, surveillance logs, school reports. And this. He pulled a print from his coat. The photo. Daniel with Cain, smiling. Claire's heart broke. He looks happy. Gray's eyes narrowed. Looks. Cain curates smiles the way he curates headlines. He slid another sheet across. But here's what matters. Handwritten notes from Daniel's tutor. Last week, he refused to write Cain on his homework. He wrote Mitchell. He doesn't know why. He just did.
Claire's breath caught. Tears blurred her vision. He remembers. Voss leaned against the wall, arms folded. Good. That's your wedge. Kane's building a house of lies, but memory leaks through cracks. We'll widen them. How? Asked Evan. Gray smirked. We put mother and son in the same room. No podium, no press, just blood recognizing blood. Claire's voice trembled. You can get me to him? Gray nodded. For a price. Evan clenched his jaw. Name it. Gray leaned in. Your silence. About how I got the files. About what lines I crossed. You keep me clean, I get you Daniel. Voss bristled. Absolutely not. But Claire interrupted, voice sharp. Yes. Both Evan and Voss turned to her. She lifted the ultrasound photo, her hands steady now. If it means I look him in the eye before Kane buries me in lies, then yes, whatever it takes. That night, Kane poured Daniel another glass of juice and spoke with that same careful smile. You don't need anyone else, he said. You have me. Daniel looked down, fingers tracing the edge of his glass. Then he whispered, almost too soft to hear. Then why do I dream about her face? Kane's smile faltered, just a fraction, and that was the first crack Daniel ever saw. The meeting wasn't official, it wasn't sanctioned, it wasn't safe, but Gray made it happen. A warehouse on the edge of the city, half condemned, with light spilling only through cracked windows. No microphones, no cameras, just the hum of a single bulb overhead. Evan stood at the door with Voss, tense as a wire. Claire paced in the center, clutching the ultrasound photo like a talisman. And then the sound of footsteps. Small ones, hesitant. Daniel. He looked taller than Claire imagined, his hair longer, his eyes older, but still hers. Still that same shape, that same depth. For a moment, she couldn't move. Her body remembered what her mind feared, the weight of him as a baby, the sound of his first cry. Daniel, she whispered. He froze. The name hit him like an echo from a place he couldn't map. Gray stayed in the shadows, watching. Kane wasn't here. Not yet, but his presence was stitched into every silence. Daniel looked at Claire, brow furrowed. Why do you say it like that? Her throat tightened. Because it's your name, the one I gave you, before anyone else. He swallowed. He said I got it from him. Claire shook her head, tears spilling. No, you got it from me, from the moment they placed you in my arms. Evan stepped forward, voice steady. She's not lying, Daniel. She's your mother. She never stopped loving you, not once. Daniel's lip trembled. He looked down, his hands clenching. Then why wasn't she there? The question cut Claire open. She dropped to her knees so she could meet his eyes. I thought giving you up was the only way to keep you safe. I was young, alone, and I was wrong to think safety meant silence. But I never stopped carrying you, not for one day. She pressed the ultrasound photo into his hands. This is proof that I saw you, that I named you, that I loved you first. Daniel stared at the blurry print, fingers tracing its edges. His lips moved, whispering words too soft for anyone but himself. And then, the heavy sound of shoes on concrete. Kane.
He stepped from the shadows in a flawless suit, flanked by two men in black. His smile was sharp, dangerous. Well, Kane said, clapping once, what a touching reunion. Gray, you've outdone yourself. Gray didn't move. His jaw was tight. His hand near his pocket where the flash drive burned like a weapon. Voss drew her gun, voice cutting. Kane, step back. Kane chuckled. Detective, do you really think a badge outruns 10 years of influence? This boy belongs with me. Ask him yourself.
He turned to Daniel. Tell them. Tell them who protected you, who gave you everything. Daniel looked between Cain's smile and Claire's trembling hands, between polished power and raw truth, between the man who told him stories and the woman who gave him a name. His voice shook. You told me she didn't want me. Cain's smile held. Because she didn't. Daniel's eyes burned. He held up the ultrasound photo. Then why do I have this? Cain faltered. Just enough. Voss seized the moment. Daniel, listen to me. We have proof, legal proof that Cain forged custody claims, that he's been manipulating your life. It's over. Cain sneered. Proof means nothing if the boy chooses me. Courts care about perception, and perception is mine. But Daniel shook his head, voice louder now. No, you lied. She gave me this name, not you. Claire reached forward, her hand shaking. Come with me, Daniel, please. For a heartbeat, the room held its breath. And then Daniel stepped into her arms. Cain's face hardened, mask cracking into fury. You'll regret this, boy, and you'll regret letting him take you from me. Gray stepped forward, tossing the flash drive at Voss. Not today. That drive has everything. Every payment, every lie, every surveillance Cain used. He's done. Voss caught it, gun still steady. Tyler Cain, you are under arrest. Cain's men shifted, but Gray's voice cut cold. Move, and you don't walk out. For the first time, Cain realized the room wasn't his. Later, in the quiet after sirens, Claire sat on the curb with Daniel in her arms. Evan stood beside them, his hand on her shoulder. Daniel leaned against her, voice small. Will you leave me again? Claire kissed his hair, her tears falling freely. Never. Not again. Not ever. Evan looked at her, at them, and something inside him settled. He hadn't lost a wife to secrets. He had gained a family through fire. The headlines the next morning were different. Cain in custody. Fraud and kidnapping charges pending. Biological mother speaks. All I want is my son safe. The world still debated her, judged her, but Daniel didn't. He only held her hand. Weeks later, in a park free of cameras, Daniel played with his paper robot under the sun. Evan sat on the bench beside Claire, watching. Do you think he'll forgive me? She asked softly. Evan smiled faintly. He already has, Claire. He came to you. That was forgiveness. Claire's eyes filled. She pulled from her pocket the ultrasound photo, creased, worn, but still whole. She tucked it into Daniel's backpack, not as a burden, but as a beginning. Her whisper carried on the breeze. This time, the name stays.